The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the David Pakman Show. I am, of course, Benjamin Dixon, filling in for David one last time. He will be back on Monday. Question: did Donald Trump have a series of mini strokes last night, or is he just a moron? Now, you know, your mental health and all that is very serious. Your physical health, that's very serious. So I'm halfway making light of this. And in a sense, I'm not, because take a look at this video. He had a really hard time saying this word, and I don't know if it's because he's just that ignorant or if something happened. Take a look.
The latest act of resistance is the op-ed published in the failing New York Times by an anonymous, gutless coward. You just look.
So honestly, like, okay, so not taking this so seriously, I feel dumber after watching that video. I mean, I actually had to pause and think to myself, anonymous. Anonymous, man. It's anonymous. And the reason, it's just the way he messed it up twice. I kind of felt frustrated for him because I don't know, every now and then, you know, your brain gets so full of thoughts and ideas. And I guess this is me being empathetic and giving him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe I shouldn't. And I'm sure you won't in the comment section. So feel free to just say whatever the heck you want to say. But for me, I felt the frustration because sometimes words do get garbled or jarbled, or see, there's another example. But also, you have to calculate into this that Donald Trump is not a very intelligent man. He does speak at the level of an 8-year-old. This is an analysis of his speech said that he speaks at a level of an 8-year-old. So it's quite possible that the president just doesn't know how to say the word. On the other hand, it's also possible that Donald Trump has driven himself into such a fury and a rage over not having control over his administration, per the New York Times anonymous op-ed this week. He could be in such a fury and a rage about that he's pushing himself to levels of stress that quite frankly look like he may be having a couple of mini strokes. Now, I point this out because there's rumors coming out of the administration, out of the White House, that the president is on a tirade, that he has lost it over this op-ed, and they are afraid that he's going to have a heart attack. And so anytime you talk about this level of anger and rage, uncontrollable rage, you really are talking about someone pushing themselves to a heart attack or a stroke. And those things, you know, notwithstanding the fact that Donald Trump is a disgusting human being, you know, he's still a person. And, you know, I would hate to see him push himself to anyway. Yeah, I would hate to see himself allow his anger to push him to something like a stroke or a heart attack. But it would be something of his own creation because it's fueled and driven by his own narcissism, his desire for absolute power, and his desire to have absolute loyalty from people around him. And if you have it in you to want to dominate and control everyone around you like that and at that high level, then you know, it's very likely that you're going to drive yourself to a stroke or a heart attack. So I'm curious. It could have been both. You know, in normal times, we would say we would wish the president well, but we're talking about Donald Trump, who sees nothing wrong with his behavior pattern. He sees nothing wrong. And in fact, it's not even it's one thing to make a conscious decision that I'm going to do this anyway. Donald Trump is the type of sociopath and narcissist that he never comes to that decision point, right? So for most of us, normal people, we honestly know and make conscious decisions to do X, Y, or Z when it comes to our personality, our behavior, and our treatment of other people. I believe, there's plenty of other people who've done research on this. Donald Trump is has such a level of megalomania that he never considers that. And so he is driving himself to this point. His inability to control his level of embarrassment by people who are exposing just how ridiculous he is and how incompetent he is. He's had the ability to hide behind this veil of a level of privacy, even though he was always in the public eye. He wasn't scrutinized by the public, and now he can't handle that. And that's pushing him to where he is now, to where he can't say, a 4-syllable word like anonymous. So something else amazing happened last night at Donald Trump's rally. Donald Trump compared himself to Abraham Lincoln, and not in just a general way that Republicans have been trying to do, trying to rewrite history. People like Dinesh D'Souza trying to rewrite history and make Republicans seem like they are the heroes throughout all of American history. No, he did it in a very specific way, comparing his eight-year-old speaking level to that of Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. Take a look at the first clip.
When Abraham Lincoln made the Gettysburg Address speech, the great speech, do you know he was ridiculed? He was ridiculed. He took the horse and carriage up from the White House. He wrote it partially in that carriage and partially at a desk in the Lincoln bedroom, which is incredible, by the way, in the White House. And he went up to Gettysburg and he delivered that speech, the Gettysburg Address. And he was excoriated by the fake news. They had fake news. He was excoriated. They said it was a terrible, terrible speech.
Actually, let's watch the rest of the video and we'll take it from there.
They said it was far too short. It's not long. Many of us know it by memory. It was far too short, and it was far too flowery. It was too flowery, 77 years ago, right? Too flowery. And he died. 50 years after his death, they said it may have been the greatest speech ever made in America. Pretty good. Pretty good. I have a feeling that's going to happen with us.
So here's the president of the United States, who legitimately speaks at the 8-year-old level, who can't pronounce a 4-syllable word, anonymous, who is driven by his megalomania, his narcissism, and his sociopathy, comparing himself to one of the greatest icons in American history, who I'm sure as we dig into, or actually not sure, I'm confident that there are things in Abraham Lincoln's legacy that are up for debate. But that's not what we're discussing here. The president of the United States, Donald Trump, who is more akin to our village idiot than anything else, not only compares himself directly to Abraham Lincoln, but compares his speeches to that of the Gettysburg Address. I don't really, you know what, from the Washington Post, Jeet here, he said it best. This is what he said on Twitter. He said, quote, "This nation shall have a new birth of freedom, and that this government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth." Abraham Lincoln. When you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. Grab them by the Donald Trump. That's what we're dealing with here. That's how ridiculous this assertion, this idea that Donald Trump is a conservative hero on the level of comparing him to the progressive hero that Abraham Lincoln is, or was rather. And so there's another layer to this that's worth discussing, because it is the revisionist history that Republicans are engaging in and conservatives are engaging in all across the country. Republicans are willing to venerate Donald Trump, to be sure, and to lift him above even Ronald Reagan, because Donald Trump, in his state of being a blank slate ideologically, that's one thing that you could pull from the article, is that Donald Trump doesn't really have any convictions. He's just in the position and allowing the conservatives around him to do whatever they want, namely appointing so many conservatives to the bench up and down the judiciary. And so because he's allowing this to happen without any pushback, in fact, he's enjoying it. He's participating in it. And because of that, conservatives are like, yeah, no, Donald Trump is one of the greatest presidents in history. Never mind his level of ignorance. Never mind his level of narcissism. Never mind the complete bereftness of morality. Never mind all of these things that really relegate Donald Trump to the dregs of society and to being lambasted throughout history going forward. Republicans don't care about any of that. Donald Trump is just the useful moron to carry out their hyper-conservative agenda, which is generally focused on cracking down on LGBTQ rights. It's also focused on reinitiating the war on drugs, which has all types of racist connotations to it. And it's about taking away a woman's right to have autonomy and over her body and privacy in medical decisions, which is what Roe versus Wade was ultimately decided on. But so long as Donald Trump allows this to happen, they don't care about anything. They will lift him up in their revisionist history above Ronald Reagan, which Ronald Reagan was not anyone to be heralded or championed, but also above Abraham Lincoln. I'm being infected by Donald Trump's stupidity there for a second, guys. But that's what they're willing to do. And the one glaring irony of this, as they try to maintain this mantle of being a part of the original Republican Party and the revisionist history that they're participating in, and they're prepared to lift this moron Donald Trump into the to the halls of American history that rivals that of Abraham Lincoln. The biggest irony of this is that the Republican Party today is nothing like the Republican Party of old. It is antithetical to the Republican Party of old. How do you know? Well, the Republican, Abraham Lincoln, waged a war against the Confederacy. And right now, today, in the South is owned by the Republican Party, the Confederate flag waving South of the Republican Party. This is who they are. And all the revisionist history attempts by people like Dinesh D'Souza cannot erase the fact that the racist Southerners who have their heritage in the original Confederacy against which Abraham Lincoln waged the Civil War, they are not the party of Lincoln. They are not the party of abolitionists. They are the party of Southern segregationists and slave owners that simply made their shift once they realized that the Republican Party was no longer a party for them.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome back to the David Pakman Show. I'm Benjamin Dixon. Let's take a look at the story of Donald Trump in his deranged attempt to do anything he can to possibly stop this immigration crisis that doesn't really exist. We'll talk about that more in a minute. But Yahoo News and several other outlets are reporting that the Trump administration wants to hold migrant children indefinitely. From Yahoo News, quote, "The Trump administration said on Thursday it plans to withdraw from a federal court agreement that strictly limits the conditions under which authorities can detain migrant children and propose new rules it said would enable it to detain minors during their immigration proceedings. The administration has long targeted the Flores Settlement Agreement, a 1997 federal consent decree that places significant curbs on how long and in what conditions the government can detain migrant children as it seeks to dissuade migrants from crossing the U.S. southern border." Now, again, like that last quote just said, this is 100% about instilling fear into potential migrants from coming. Not only just migrants, immigrants, but also asylum seekers. And what the administration understands but doesn't care is that in many times asylum seekers and people who are seeking to just simply come to America to better their conditions have already made the conscious decision that whatever happens to them in America is better than what they're going through in their home country. That's already a part of the calculus. So what Donald Trump is attempting to do is not going to be a deterrent, but it really is nothing more than playing to these racist sensibilities of his base. And I say that also because there literally is no crisis at the border. If you look at the actual data, thenation.com actually did some amazing reporting on this, as well as the Washington Post. If you look at the actual data, immigration or illegal immigration at the border has decreased significantly. The decrease has been a constant decline over the last decade. It did not increase simply because of Donald Trump. The trend began before President Obama. And so there is no border crisis, yet they continuously create this boogeyman that pushes their voters to the poll and keeps them constantly enraged. That's what this is about. This is about making sure that they make a statement to their supporters as well as to the rest of the world that they want America to maintain its whiteness. There's a clip of, and I may get this clip put in here, of Bill O'Reilly talking to then candidate for president, Senator, not Lindsey Graham, but the one that just died, John McCain. John McCain. He's having a conversation with John McCain back in 2008, and he literally described this situation as the browning of America. That is exactly what they're trying to avoid, and this is why they're playing to this problem that doesn't exist. But I want to read a little bit more from Yahoo News. This is what they said, quote, "The regulation released on Thursday, if it goes into effect, would enshrine some of the protections while circumventing others by allowing the government to detain children in facilities not licensed by state authorities to hold minors. Trump administration officials have repeatedly referred to the agreement standards as loopholes that attract migrants by forcing authorities to release people pending their immigration hearings." Catch and release is what they use as a way of making this propagandistic talking point. Basically, this is the catch and release. And so they feel as though this is something that's going to deter illegal immigration or even asylum seekers, when in reality, people have already made that calculus. They know Donald Trump is in the White House. They know what's going to happen to them when they get to America. And they're leaving conditions that are so terrifying that they're willing to face this. And this is why this rule has nothing really, and Donald Trump is aware of that. First of all, before I finish that sentence, the Trump administration and all of the people involved in this, Stephen Miller, all of them are fully aware of this condition that people, the conditions that people are fleeing, and they know that people are still going to come. They also know that there is actually no border crisis. So all of this is a part of a calculated effort to do nothing but continuously stoke anger amongst their supporters. I want to read a quote from Omar Jadwat. He's the director of the ACLU's Immigrants' Rights Project. And this is what he had to say. Very simply, he said, "It is sickening to see the United States government looking for ways to jail more children for longer periods of time." And this is absolutely the case. They have no regard for human life or human decency or dignity. They're actually getting enjoyment. They are seeking for the opportunity to do more damage. This is the caliber of people we are dealing with. And I think we have to make sure that we're clear. We have a clear-eyed view of what these people want to do, because I think sometimes we like to err on the side of giving people the benefit of the doubt, or we make the naive mistake of arguing within the framework that they give us. They want to give us the framework of immigration is a problem, or illegal immigration is a problem. In reality, illegal immigration has been dramatically increased even during the Obama administration. So no, it's not a problem. And in actuality, if we completely shatter the frame that they try to give us, we have to understand in full context that this is about them playing to the fears of white genocide. Literally. In fact, I mentioned it before, but we're going to put it here. Play this clip of Bill O'Reilly letting them know that this is about the browning of America and about preserving the white male Christian power structure.
Change, pardon the pun, the whole complexion of America. Am I wrong?
No, you're right. The second thing that on the left they're against is the temporary worker, as you know. We say 2 years, go back for a year, 2 years, go back for a year. They don't want that. They don't want them to have to go back.
But the strategy is
people can come and work.
Do you understand, and I'm not saying this in a condescending way, you're smarter than I am,
sure.
But do you understand what the New York Times wants and the far left want? They want to break down the white Christian male power structure, of which you're a part, and so am I. And they want to bring in millions of foreign nationals to basically break down the structure that we have.
I mean, he clearly said it. Those are their words. And that's all the way back in 2008. And that's when we consider America to have been a more civilized time. This is pre-Donald Trump madness. And now we're in a world where the Steve Bannons of the world, well, he's gone, but he was there. And the Stephen Millers, who is still there. And people who are connected to white nationalists are still connected to Donald Trump. And Donald Trump has allegedly said that his biggest mistake was condemning the Nazis in Charlottesville. Look at where we are now and compare it to where they were in 2008. And you see a direct line through this thinking that immigration is going to cause the browning of America and send us into a place where the white male Christian power structure is destroyed. That is their number one concern. And that is what this is all about. And they are willing to sacrifice all of these children simply to carry out their fight against immigration. So last night was the kickoff to the NFL season, the 2018 NFL season. I believe it was the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Atlanta Hawks. The Atlanta, whatever. I don't follow Atlanta sports, even though I live here. I'm a Saints fan, so please send me your condolences in email. But I digress. Last night during the opening game for the season, Nike really raised the ante for all the people who were burning shoes, for all the people who burned shoes while they had them on their feet still, people who accidentally burned down their houses because they were burning shoes, all the people who boycotted. Nike said, I see your boycotts, I see your burning of our shoes, and I'm going to raise you a commercial. Take a look at this.
Don't believe you have to be like anybody to be somebody. If you're born a refugee, don't let it stop you from playing soccer for the national team at age 16. Don't become the best basketball player on the planet. Be bigger than basketball. Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything.
And that's only, I believe, about 30 seconds or so of the full commercial. The full commercial is almost 2 minutes long. Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. Colin Kaepernick with the fly turtleneck and jacket. It's still summer, man. I don't know where he's at, where he needs something like that, but I digress. It's nicely put together. But the point is, the commercial is awesome, is an awesome troll. It literally is saying to America, we don't care. And there's a lot of conversations on the left, if I could go off on a tangent real quick. A lot of conversations on the left because of what Nike is. We know what Nike is. Nike is it's obviously a capitalistic organization. I mean, there's no question about that, right? And they are utilizing overseas labor in sweatshops. They have a history of using it. They try to get away from it, and it seems like they just can't get off of sweatshops. They have a history of using child labor. And so there's a lot of conversations on the left about whether or not we should be excited about Nike endorsing Colin Kaepernick. And I would say that this is exactly why we should be excited about it, because it is while Nike is problematic on side A, on side B, they are absolutely amplifying Colin Kaepernick to the level of making not only the president of the United States freak out, making conservatives around the country freak out, and directly challenging, more specifically than just the freaking out, but directly challenging this power structure. I mean, directly. I mean, there's no question about it. You could say, well, Nike is a part of that power structure. Yeah, they absolutely are. But they are also fueling opposition to this power structure. So no matter how you cut it, this is a good thing in the long run, particularly for the fight a fight against police brutality, the fight against white supremacy, the fight against this narcissistic megalomaniac that's in the White House. I mean, it's a good thing. And we can simultaneously say Nike is doing a good thing with this endorsement of Colin Kaepernick, but Nike needs to still be held accountable. And we can also push people to challenge them, the Serena Williams of the world, all of the people, everyone who has an endorsement should challenge Nike, but they probably won't. But I digress. Donald Trump had a really simple response to this, and I want to read it on your screen. He tweeted this morning, "What was Nike thinking?" Well, Mr. President, Nike was thinking we don't really care what you think. We don't really care what conservative America thinks. We don't care what any of these people think. And they are saying Nike does have a tradition. Before I start that sentence, Nike does have a tradition of making social statements. That has been a part of their brand. That has been part of their marketing strategy. That has been part of their profit strategy, to be sure. And Nike has consistently done this over the years. And so this is par for the course for Nike. And they're going to win because of this, because they've done the math. They've run the numbers. They took about a 3%, roughly a 3% hit yesterday before the game, but I believe they've ticked back up. So, you know, it's going to be a win for Nike. It's clearly a win for Colin Kaepernick, because without him having to do anything but be himself, he's able to directly challenge the NFL, all of his opponents, as well as the President of the United States.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Welcome back. As far as the Kavanaugh hearings are going, there's just so many hours and so much content that we can't possibly cover it all. But there was a moment yesterday that got me really excited, and there's some question about the legitimacy of that moment, but I still want to address it. The Cory Booker, who I'm not a fan of. If you go to my channel, I have a video called "Cory Booker is Trash." So obviously I'm not a fan of him, but you know, sometimes people you don't like do good things. And this is what he did. Take a look at the video.
Understand what that kind of civil disobedience is, and I understand the consequences. So I am right now, before your process is finished, I'm going to release the email about racial profiling. And I understand that the penalty comes with potential ousting from the Senate. And if Senator Cornyn believes that I violated Senate rules, I openly invite and accept the consequences of my team releasing that email right now. And I'm releasing it to expose that, number one, the emails that are being withheld from the public have nothing to do with national security.
Okay, so, you know, in a moment when there seems to be like nothing else that they can do, it makes absolute sense for the Democrats to break the rules. And there really should be no regard for the rule at this point, because Republicans have demonstrated time and time again that they're willing to break the rules. So why should the Democrats hold themselves to any standard when the Republicans have demonstrated they're willing to break every standard in order to get political wins? So, I mean, Cory Booker, who I'm not a fan of, I'm a little bit more of a fan of his today. I'm considering taking that video down, but not before you go watch it. Cory Booker is trash. But I digress. Here's the interesting thing about this story. The Washington Post is reporting this, quote, "As it turns out, the documents Booker released had already been cleared by Burke." Now, Burke is a former attorney for President George W. Bush underneath the Bush administration. And this is what they also said. They said, quote, this is a quote from Burke. He said, quote, "We cleared the documents last night shortly after Senator Booker's staff asked us to." He said, "We were surprised to learn about Senator Booker's histrionics this morning because we had already told him he could use the documents publicly." Now, possibly it could be the case. It could be that Cory Booker is just simply grandstanding here. But the reason I have pause about Cory Booker just grandstanding is because of the reaction of the Republicans when he just mentioned it. He simply mentioned it on the night previous to this event, and they lost their minds. Right. And then even after he did it, during the time that Burke, William Burke, said that they had already cleared the documents, as he was doing this, after he supposedly knew, where all of them are supposedly have known that these documents were cleared to be released, Republicans continued to lose their mind. Take a look at Senator Corbyn's warning to Cory Booker.
Any senator, officer, or employee of the Senate who shall disclose the secret or confidential business or proceedings of the Senate, including the business and proceedings of the committees, subcommittees, and offices of the Senate, shall be liable, if a senator, to suffer expulsion from the body, and if an officer or employee, to dismissal from the service of the Senate and to punishment or contempt. So I would correct the senator's statement. There is no rule. There is clearly a rule that applies.
Then apply the rule and bring the charges.
And so to me, it gives me pause when everyone is saying, oh, he obviously knew about it and he was just grandstanding. Well, in the moment that they were creating, conservatives in that committee tried to make it seem as though he was going to be put out. So it makes sense to me, even if Cory Booker knew, he bluffed them. He trolled them. If it is the case that Cory Booker knew that this was going to be made public and it was fine for him to do it, and Republicans were still making this big scene to try to scare him, then the cards were in his hand. He just sat back and was like, I already know this is not going to cost me anything, but if you want to make a scene, I'll make a scene with you. It's, people are like, oh, why would he possibly do that? I mean, you obviously have never bluffed in poker. So I don't know. Maybe people don't play poker anymore, but I have a feeling that they know full and well that the Republicans were trying to make him back down and try to make him afraid to share what he knew he had the authority to share. And even if he didn't have the authority, I'm going to make the case that the Democrats should just break all the rules. But I'm going to get back to that in a second. Here's another quote from the Washington Post. They said, at issue are documents provided to the committee before the hearings. Kavanaugh must be evaluated by the committee before his nomination can be sent to the full Senate for confirmation. Booker of New Jersey took issue with how and when some of those documents were released, including a set released after having been vetted by William Burke, an attorney for President George W. Bush. Kavanaugh served in Bush's administration. That is the problem. That's one of the number one problems here, is that so many of the documents that they don't have access to have been deemed confidential by a person who's outside of the senatorial process. How is this William Burke, a private attorney, allowed to make decisions that affect the future of this country outside of being an elected official or even being on a committee or a subcommittee or being an aide to one of those committees? He's not a part of the process, yet this attorney who served in the underneath President Bush at the same time as Kavanaugh has had access to documents and deemed an entire swath, tens of thousands of documents he has deemed confidential. And this is what Cory Booker was pushing back against. And this is also what Cory Booker was trying to expose. Like him or not, and I have a tendency to not like him. Thus my video, Cory Booker is trash. You can go check it out on my channel. Like him or not, he's right here. There's absolutely no way in hell that this guy who is not an elected official, this person who's not held accountable to elected officials, who is completely outside of this process, should have the ability to determine what is confidential and what is not. That is the problem. And because of this has demonstrated, not only in this instance, but in so many instances, the Republicans have demonstrated their willingness to completely obliterate tradition, completely ignore norms, completely reject the institutions that they set up. Things like the filibuster. They're willing to do away with that. They're willing to ignore the nomination of Merrick Garland. They're willing to do anything and everything to win. They are willing to break every rule to win. Because of that, I fully believe that the Democrats and anyone else getting elected into power should reject all of the rules, break every single rule. Do not play by the games that they have set up, they being Republicans. I want to play one last clip to make this case. Look at how Senator Cornyn is trying to make it seem as though the Democrats are behaving badly.
I was disappointed to see last night that some of our colleagues are unwilling or unable to conduct themselves in this hearing with regular order and in accordance with the rules of the committee and the rules of the Senate. I know last night some of our colleagues even tried to cross-examine the nominee about documents but refused to let him even read them.
And this is what I called weaponized decorum. They're attempting to make the Democrats behave. And if they can always make the Democrats be good boys and girls and not break Senate tradition, then they have the advantage because they have demonstrated they don't care what the Democrats think. They will break Senate tradition. They will break all the rules. They will do everything that they possibly can to win. And that creates what I talk about all the time on my show, an asymmetrical political battle. Anytime you're in an asymmetrical fight, one side has the advantage because the other side is not playing on the same leveled playing field. Republicans don't hold themselves to any standards. Democrats are trying to play by the rules. And honestly, this is the biggest mistake of Barack Obama's presidency. This is where he was the weakest. President Obama tried to hold on to institutions like bipartisanship. He tried to hold on to institutions like decorum. He tried to hold on to concepts and that really Republicans had rejected a long time ago. And he tried to appeal to the better humanity in Republicans, and he learned the hard way, and subsequently the rest of us, America, learned the hard way that Republicans don't care. Republicans will break every rule. Republicans will spit in your face and ask you, why are you so angry when you confront them? That's exactly what Republicans will do. Republicans will destroy, they will burn down the entire house and ask you, why are you upset about it when you confront them? That is the asymmetrical political battle that we are engaged in. And if we continue to play on this playing field, this imbalanced playing field, Republicans will keep winning over and over and over again. And we cannot afford that, and we cannot let that continue to happen. So Zina Bash is the assistant to Brett Kavanaugh, who allegedly threw up a white power symbol. Or actually, no, the other day she was sitting like this, demonstrated. I can't even, I mean, there you go. There you go. I can get in the camera now. Some weird way of sitting that gave the white power gesture. Now, it was all over Twitter, social media. It didn't really hit the news so much because people dismissed it as, it's nothing. You guys are being ridiculous. Well, this is what she did yesterday. And I'm going to bring the tweet up on the screen from a guy named Carl Newman. I don't even know who this guy is, but it was a useful tweet. And so anyway, he said, what the hell is wrong with Zina Bash? And there she is just throwing it up. And if you watch the video, she really just throws it up for no reason at all. It's almost like she pretended to talk to somebody and then threw it up. I don't care outside of the context of a video that I've done, I did previously while I was at David's studio. So I want to play this video where I explain that it really doesn't matter if they are simply trolling. The way you use a symbol, the origins of a symbol and its usage really decide whether or not it becomes a symbol of hate. And as we can see in this video that while they're trying to make this a gag, the fact of the matter is that the gag originated in white supremacist 4chan channels and spread and continuously is now being used by people who are demonstrating hate. And so I explained it much better about a year ago in regards to a case of Cassandra Fairbanks, who is a right-wing troll. She was she's everywhere now, so I don't even have to explain that. But she's suing a reporter about claiming that she was using a white supremacist symbol. Enough with the introduction. Here's the video from last year about this at David's studio. Cassandra Fairbanks, she writes for Big League Politics. She's written for quite a few other outlets. She has a big voice on Twitter. She was once a fervent Bernie Sanders supporter. And that's where I first met her and got connected with her. And she quickly devolved into being strongly affiliated with white nationalists, white supremacists, definitely affiliated with the alt-right, people like Richard Spencer. She quickly devolved from being a Bernie Sanders supporter to being an all-out Trump girl overnight. That's a whole different conversation. Cassandra Fairbanks is suing Fusion reporter Emma Roller because she believes that Emma defamed her when she tweeted an image of Fairbanks at the White House making what Emma Roller from Fusion claimed to be a white power hand gesture. In the picture behind us, you see she's there with Mike Cernovich, however you pronounce his last name. And so this is what the lawsuit is basically saying, that Emma, by tweeting this out, it was retweeted, I believe, 6,000 times, by tweeting this out and saying that this was a white supremacist hand gesture, that she slandered and defamed Cassandra Fairbanks. I don't know how you could defame. Anyway, I'll leave all the ad hominems for the end. So here's where this is going to actually be. This is going to be an interesting lawsuit for several reasons. And for reasons that I don't think Cassandra has thought out all the way. And so I'm going to help you think it out, Cassandra. The question behind this is, what's in a symbol? What defines a symbol? What gives a symbol its meaning? Because, and the reason I start there is not just to be philosophical, it's really because this symbol, this OK symbol, right? It started off as a joke in alt-right circles and 4chan and that entire cesspool. It started off as a means of trolling the media. And they wanted to see that if they could get media personalities and media heads and journalists to say that a symbol that is rather innocuous is now a symbol of white supremacy. And because they see this as a big joke, they can easily claim plausible deniability whenever using it in the context, like in the picture behind me. They can say, oh, this is not a white nationalist symbol because we're just making a joke, and ha ha, he, you fell for the joke. And so now here she's suing, Cassandra Fairbanks is suing Emma Roller, and she's saying, I'm not a white nationalist. You're sullying my brand. I don't really know how the hell you're going to sully her brand, but by calling her a white nationalist when she affiliates herself in every single tweet, every single day of the week with the most disgusting scum of the white nationalist movement. Like, why do you want to run away from this now? Let's go off on a tangent. Cassandra, why would you want to run away from what you embrace all day long? Apparently it's because she wants to make a statement. I don't think this is going to make the statement that she thinks it's going to make, because now we come full circle and ask ourselves, what gives a symbol meaning? And this is a question that the judge is going to have to decide. I said on a video last week that it doesn't really matter what they call themselves. It doesn't matter how they self-identify. What matters is who they are and what they're doing with that identification, right? And so whether or not they call themselves white nationalists is irrelevant. Whether or not they self-identify as white supremacists is completely irrelevant if everything that they do is consistent with white supremacy. It doesn't matter if you don't call yourself a Nazi if you espouse Nazi rhetoric, if you espouse Nazi ideologies, if you use the symbol and the gestures and the salutes of Nazism. It doesn't matter if you don't call yourself a Nazi. What matters is who you are and what you're doing with it. And what they're doing with these symbols is identifying these rather innocuous symbols with white supremacy and with white nationalism and with Nazism. Over and above what they're doing with it, it also has a connection with who started this and where did it come from and who's the leading force behind it. And some of the leading forces behind this symbol really is a Nazi, a self-avowed, well, he wouldn't consider himself to be a true Nazi, but Richard Spencer, one of the most hate-filled, nationally recognized scumbags of white nationalism. And so he's a part of the beginnings of this symbol. This is where it had its start. This is where it had its inception. It had its inception as a joke, but it was a joke started by a bunch of white nationalists. And the way that it's utilized and the way that it's carried out in society, and society is kind of a broad term, well, the way it's carried out in their circles is while they're simultaneously making a joke of it, they are utilizing it as a way of identifying people who carry the same filthy white nationalist ideologies. So the question that the judge is going to have to answer is what's in the meaning of it? What gives a symbol its meaning? What gives a symbol? What imbues a symbol with the hatred that surrounds it? What causes that? Because it's not as though the swastika by the shape itself is naturally an evil symbol, but it has most certainly become a symbol of evil in society because of who used it and how it was used. And so while this symbol, this okay symbol is rather innocuous and is something rather bland and mundane, who's using it and how are they using it? I would be interested in seeing how the judge will decide on this, because the implications will have far-reaching ramifications. If he does make the case that it doesn't matter how this started, what matters is where it came from and how it's being utilized, then now we will actually have on court record a decision, a case study saying that this symbol that the 4chan trolls and Richard Spencers of the world started off as a way of trolling the media now is itself a symbol of white supremacy. And everyone who's holding it up and using it will now be forever affiliated with the symbol of white supremacy, Nazism, and all around hatred. So while this is an attack on Emma Roller, and I'm quite sure there's going to be a lot of us who are going to, help her with her legal fees if necessary. I'm sure her organization probably has lawyers ready for it. While this is a direct attack on Emma, and while this is something that Cassandra Fairbanks thinks is going to make a statement in her favor, it's very likely that this is going to be turned around on her and forever stigmatize her with the reality that she went into the White House briefing room and used a symbol that she felt was trolling America, but because of where it started and how it's been used, is quite and actually a symbol of white supremacy and white nationalism.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
All right, this next clip is hilarious, and it's so revealing. I want to pull up the tweet first by Mrs. Betty Bowers, because everyone's talking about this, but she put this perfectly. And this is what she said, quote, "This hilarious two-candid guy behind Trump was deemed an unsuitable background prop by the Trump choreographers. He was replaced with someone who could actually feign enthusiasm for dear leader." All right, let's take a look at the video.
To find things out that we didn't know, it's hard and harder to win than popular vote. Popular vote, you go to 3-4 states and boom, 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 you win the fight. It's like the 100-yard dash versus running the mile. You practice differently.
I mean, his expressions. Okay, first of all, let's be clear. He's there to support Donald Trump, so it very likely this guy is a tool. But I mean, every dog has his day. Like, that's the only appropriate response that you could have to Donald Trump. All right, let me repeat. That is the only appropriate Trump to Donald Trump's madness. Everyone's sitting behind him constantly cheering. They're like completely programmed automatons, sycophants. They're just there to cheer at anything he says. And this guy can't believe. He's like, oh, my. All right, so that was unacceptable. Clearly, it's unacceptable. You can't have anybody with natural reactions standing behind you. And so here's a video of him being replaced as the president speaks. And they escort him out. He's like, whatever, I'm gone. I mean, this is classic. I think we all know that these events are staged, no matter who, no matter what. But how often do you get such such a confluence of insanity, where you have the madman in chief on stage saying some ridiculous drivel that's so ridiculous that somebody who came there to support him literally cannot believe how stupid this man is talking in front of him. And then you get the obvious switch changing of the guard. So, you know, you have people in the background. Clearly, I mean, I would do this too. You're looking at the screen. How does it look? What's the image? So it's not to knock the science and the art form of stagecraft, right? Because I'd be disingenuous if I didn't say everything around me was at least partially staged. You know what I mean? Because you want your set to look as good as it can look for your budget and for your time frame. Donald Trump pays good money. And I guess they're saying we're not going to pay this guy his $50 to stand behind Donald Trump. And he actually responds naturally to the president. I mean, now, I don't want to keep drawing this false equivalence either. Let's shift gears. You know, when Barack Obama speaks, he says some good stuff. He genuinely says stuff that people are going to cheer for. I don't think you're ever going to get a single video of I was going to say George W. Bush too, but I have to pause and remember just how ignorant George W. Bush really was. Let's take a moment of silence for this not being the first idiotic Republican president that we've had to suffer. So in my excitement to make this look as though Donald Trump is the dumbest president we've ever had, just go back one administration. Go back, skip Obama and go to George W. Bush. And we've had our encounter with ignorant presidents before. So to my point, you are not going to find a video of someone having a naturally negative response to Barack Obama, because Barack Obama really didn't say anything in his speeches that could ever lead to that kind of reaction. Now, some of the things he may have done in office is a different question, but that's not what we're discussing here. These people know full and well who they're dealing with. That's the point of this clip. Republicans know that they are dealing with a moron as president of the United States. They knew George W. Bush was a moron and still a moron today, and we should not rehabilitate him. I don't care how many pieces of candy he passes Michelle Obama. He's a moron who destroyed the Middle East, destabilized it, and threw us into a generation-long war, and he's a moron. They knew who he was. They knew exactly the last redeeming, partially redeemable Republican president that we had was Herbert Walker Bush. And that's only because the situation Ronald Reagan left him was so bad that he had no choice but to raise taxes to try to actually fix the economy. But I digress. The point is, the two Republican presidents after that have been on, magnitudes of order more ignorant than anything that we've seen in a long time. So much so that people who support him have to be at home, have to be at these rallies like, that's the only natural response to Donald Trump. That's it. But if I was actually trying to say something meaningful in this clip, because it's Friday and I'm getting ready to go. Thanks for having me, David. But I'm ready to go to a happy hour somewhere. But something meaningful to be taken from this clip is that they embrace this ignorance. They 100% embrace this level of ignorance, and it has become a tool that they use. I talked about it earlier this week, weaponized ignorance. It is a tool that they use for political power. And so it is fun to really laugh at how ignorant Donald Trump is and how ignorant George W. Bush was and is. But the reality of it is that they understand the art form of ignorance, and they have weaponized it to a point that they can gain political power by being the dumbest person in the room. What does that say about America? It says a lot of terrible things about America, and it certainly does not bode well for our future. But like I said before, if they can weaponize ignorance and hatred and bigotry, and if they can be willing to break all of the rules in order to do the wrong thing, surely we on the left must be willing to weaponize the truth, weaponize all of our intellect, and not just sit on it and not just navel gaze and talk about how smart we are, but weaponize it and break all of the rules to do the right thing. Listen, folks, it's been a great week. Thanks for hanging out with me. David, thanks so much for your for the opportunity. all of you, go over to my page, YouTube, and subscribe. And if you don't subscribe there, or even if you do, go to thebenjamindixonshow.com and sign up for my newsletter. I do not spam. I might hit you with 1 or 2 emails a week at most, and I give you a succinct breakdown of what's happening in 3 bullet points. The point of it is to get to the point so that you can get everything that you need to know before you get bored. That's the point. Thanks again. Have a great weekend, and I will see you sometime in October. Take care.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.